Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring the world of Alan Watts,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm excited about this one.
Me too.
Yeah, this one should be good.
Big fan.
Yeah, and, just his unique perspective
Yeah.
on life and the universe and everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to kind of dig into this.
Yeah.
And you shared with me one of his transcribed lectures and the idea is to kind of unpack this idea
Right.
that he has of life being like a game.
That's right.
So I'm curious to see what we come up with, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Alan Watts was he was a philosopher, but I always think of him as like an interpreter.
Okay.
Like he was really great at taking Eastern philosophy and kind of like translating it for a Western audience.
Right.
And he did it in a way that was like really beautiful and poetic and engaging
Yeah.
and like sometimes funny.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that struck me about this lecture was how he paints this picture of the universe as this like grand illusion,
Mm-hmm.
almost like this magical game that we're all participating in.
Yeah.
And I think he uses this vivid imagery.
Yeah.
He describes the world as this he uses the word like spellbinding enchantment.
Yeah.
And even uses words like chant and maze and arabesque, to kind of evoke this feeling of being completely absorbed in something.
Right.
Like we're captivated by this cosmic performance.
Well, I think that's what he's trying to get at is this idea that like we're not just passive observers of the universe, but we're actually participants in it,
Yeah.
And he uses those images to kind of like draw you in
Yeah.
to that experience.
Well, he says like these moments where we lose ourselves,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the boundary between us and the world seems to dissolve.
Yeah.
Like that's a glimpse into the true nature of reality.
Right. And think about a time when you were like completely lost in a book or a movie or something.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of forget about yourself, forget about time, forget about everything else, and you're just completely absorbed
Right.
in that experience.
Right.
That's the kind of enchantment
Yeah.
that Watts is talking about.
Yeah, and so that leads into like this idea of no separation,
Right.
only oneness.
Yes.
And that's like one of his core ideas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that there's really no separate you
Mm-hmm.
apart from the universe.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
are the universe.
You are the universe experiencing itself,
Yeah.
just from a slightly different point of view
Right, exactly.
and everything else.
And it's like mind-blowing when you think about it. Like
Yeah.
it really is.
He talks about the universe looking at itself from billions of points of view.
Yeah.
Like every atom, every piece of existence is the universe experiencing itself
Yeah.
from that point of view.
And he uses the analogy of the ocean, right?
Yeah, like the universe is this endlessly waving ocean,
Yeah.
and what we perceive as death is just the trough between the waves. Like it's just a temporary disappearance before the next crest rises.
So it's all part of that same flow.
It's all part of the same flow.
Yeah. And so, okay, so you were all these waves
Yeah.
in this vast cosmic ocean,
Yeah.
all part of this interconnected,
Yeah.
ever-changing universe.
Mm.
But then he throws in this like curveball.
Yeah.
He says, we actually need
We need enemies.
enemies. We need
Wow.
opposition.
Yeah, and this is like so
It seems counterintuitive.
counterintuitive, right?
At first, why would we need enemies?
Yeah, why would we need that?
Well, it's about contrast.
Okay.
How do you define up without down?
Okay.
How do you know what light is without experiencing darkness?
I see what you're saying.
Think about it. Have you ever learned something valuable
Yeah.
from a disagreement or a challenge?
Yeah.
That's what Watts is getting at.
Okay.
It's about understanding that opposites are not separate entities.
Right.
They're two sides of the same coin.
They define each other.
I see what you mean.
And he takes this even further.
Okay.
And he challenges our assumptions about good and bad, right and wrong.
Okay.
He's got this sharp wit. And he says things like, love your competitors
Okay.
and pray for those who undercut your prices.
Mhm.
You would be nowhere at all without them.
He really makes you think.
Yeah.
Like when he says stuff like that,
Yeah.
he really makes you reconsider.
It's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we need these opposing forces,
Yeah.
these enemies to help us see who we are
Yeah.
and what we stand for.
Mm-hmm.
But so how does this idea of embracing enemies connect to his view of life as a game?
Well, it's about recognizing that the game isn't about winning or losing
Mm.
in the traditional sense.
Okay.
It's about engaging in the play itself,
Okay.
Embracing the challenges and seeing them as opportunities for growth
I see.
and self-discovery.
So it's more about how we play the game
Yeah.
rather than the outcome.
That's-
And this brings us to another point that he makes, is the importance of approaching life
with a playful attitude.
with a playful attitude. Yeah, what did you think about that?
Well, he's not saying we shouldn't take things seriously,
Right.
but he's saying we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously.
Okay.
You know, it's about finding the humor in our struggles,
Mm-hmm.
embracing the absurdity of it all,
Okay.
you know, and shifting our perspective from one of work and struggle to one of play
Right.
and exploration.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about loosening our grip a little.
Yeah.
And finding the joy.
Finding the joy in the journey.
Yeah, in the journey.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another thing that he talks about is these self-contradictory rules of the game.
Right.
You know, he critiques these like societal double binds, like the expectation to be both free
Yeah.
and obedient.
Right.
You know, or to be independent
Yeah.
while conforming to social norms.
Yeah.
It's like we're constantly being pulled.
In opposite directions.
Yeah, in these opposite directions.
Yeah, like the rules of the game are set up to create a sense of frustration.
Uh-huh.
Watts would argue that those contradictory rules are a sign that something's amiss.
Okay.
That it's not us that's the problem. It's the game itself that needs to change.
Right.
You know,
That's like we're trying to play chess with checkers pieces.
exactly.
You know, like it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if the rules are the problem, then how do we even approach this?
Right.
Like if we're all caught up in this game
Mm-hmm.
with these messed up rules,
Yeah.
where do we even go from here?
Well, Watts suggests we need a new way of seeing
Okay.
a kind of correlative vision,
Correlative vision.
which means recognizing the interdependence
Okay.
of things that might appear to be opposites.
Okay.
You know, he uses these playful terms, prickly and gooey,
Yeah.
to describe two different approaches to
Wow.
understanding the world.
And I like that he does that. Too.
He's got this, like,
It's very
Holy-
playful.
yeah,
And so the prickly approach is focused on like differences in analysis.
right. It's like dissecting a problem
Right,
into
right.
its smallest parts.
Right.
The gooey approach
Right.
is looking for underlying unity and synthesis.
Okay.
It's about looking for the overarching themes and connections.
So a prickly thinker might say, like, here's a list of all the things that are wrong.
Right.
And a gooey thinker might say, how are all of these things connected?
Exactly. And Watts argues that we need both.
Okay.
We need that prickly precision to see the details,
Okay.
but we also need that gooey understanding to see how it all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like we need to become masters of both zooming in
Okay.
and zooming out,
Yeah.
seeing the individual pieces
Wow.
and the bigger picture at the same time.
Yeah. This is so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting to consider all this stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle I think that we need to address.
You're talking about death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both personal death,
So-
the ultimate end of
Yeah.
the universe itself.
The death of the universe.
Yeah.
Yes.
How does this game of life
Yeah.
make sense in the face of something
Mm-hmm.
as final?
As final as death.
As death, yeah. And so we'll explore that, I think, in the next time.
Yeah.
Part of our deep dive into the fascinating world of Alan Watts.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
So let's jump back into this.
Back into the deep end.
Yeah, back into the deep end with Alan Watts.
Yeah.
And these profound ideas that he has. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we left off talking about death.
Yeah.
And, a topic that I think can feel kind of daunting.
It can.
But Watts approaches it head on with this thought experiment.
He really, he doesn't shy away from the vastness of it all.
Right.
You know, he talks about how when the universe eventually ends,
Yeah.
with all of its energy dissipating, it will be as if it had never happened.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So how does he reconcile this idea of the universe ending with this concept of life as a game?
Well, he connects it to our individual deaths, you know.
Okay.
Imagine your consciousness as this, flash of energy,
Okay.
you know, bursting into being and then fading out.
Right.
He suggests it might be similar to the universe itself,
Good.
appearing and disappearing in the grand scheme of existence.
It's like a cosmic blink,
Yeah.
just this pulse of energy
Wow.
and this vastness of time and space.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder, are we talking about reincarnation here?
I don't know if it's necessarily about reincarnation. I think it's more about shifting our perspective.
Okay.
You know, he's urging us to move beyond
Okay.
this linear narrative of birth, life, and death.
Right.
What if there's a grander cycle at play?
Okay.
Something beyond our current understanding of time.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm really starting to get the scope of
Yeah.
what he's
Gets
getting at, and
yeah.
and it's really humbling,
It is.
when you think about it.
Oh.
Yeah. This brings us to his call for a new image of man
Right.
and reassessing our place within this vast cosmos. Because it's easy to feel insignificant when you consider
Oh, yeah.
the sheer scale of the universe.
It's like, what difference does
Yeah.
one tiny human life
Yeah,
make
Yeah, exactly.
in the grand scheme of things?
Exactly, and I think we've all pondered that at
Right.
some point.
Yeah.
But Watts wouldn't argue with the feeling,
No.
but he would challenge
The conclusion.
the conclusion, yeah.
Yeah.
And he reminds us that it's the human brain,
Yes.
this incredibly complex, mysterious organ
Yes.
that allows us to perceive and experience the universe
That's right.
in the first place.
In the first place. Yeah.
And so that's a powerful reminder
Yeah.
that we're not simply passive observers.
Right.
We're active participants in this unfolding of the cosmos.
Yeah. He describes it beautifully. He says the human brain is precisely what transforms.
This immense electrical pulsation into light and color, shape and sound.
Yeah, and that's the point.
That's it, right there.
We're not separate from the universe,
Right.
observing it from a distance.
We are the universe.
We are the universe.
Experiencing itself through our senses,
Yeah.
our thoughts,
Yeah.
our emotions.
And it brings us full circle to this idea of life as a game.
Exactly.
If we're all interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
all part of this unified process,
Right.
then life isn't about winning or losing.
Yeah.
It's about the experience.
It's about playing the game.
Playing the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that even our struggles and, failure, moments of despair are all integral parts
They're all part of the game.
of this cosmic play. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not about avoiding those difficult parts of life,
Right.
but it's about changing how we relate to them.
Exactly.
Embracing the absurdity.
Finding the humor.
Yeah, finding the humor.
Remembering that it's all part of this larger...
Cosmic play.
Yeah, and that's...
Watts would say that true wisdom lies in recognizing that we're not isolated beings striving for something outside ourselves.
Right.
We are the universe.
Right.
And the universe is us.
And that's such a profound insight.
It is.
And it's incredibly liberating.
It is.
When you really...
It takes a weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, it's like a weight has been lifted.
Yeah.
But there's still this question that lingers.
What's that?
If life is a game,
Yeah.
what are the rules?
That's a good question.
Like, how do we know if we're playing it right?
Stay tuned for part 3,
Okay.
where we'll explore that very question.
All right, so we'll dive into that.
Yeah, we'll dive even deeper.
All right, so we're back.
Back for more.
Yeah, back for more Alan Watts.
Plunging right back in.
Yeah, and this idea of life as a game,
Mm-hmm.
the universe is this magical illusion,
Yeah.
and the importance of embracing a playful attitude.
Right.
But we left off with this question of,
Of the rules.
yeah, if life is a game, what are the rules?
Yeah. How do we know if we're even playing it right?
Right, and I think that's something that a lot of people
Yeah, I think so too.
naturally kind of
Yeah.
gravitate towards.
Right. It's like, okay, it's a game, but
Yeah.
how do I win?
Yeah, what's the
What are the rules?
what's the rule book? How do I
Well,
win?
all right, give me the cheat sheet.
Yeah, exactly.
But Watts doesn't really give us a simple answer.
Yeah.
He doesn't hand us like a 10-step guide for winning at life.
Yeah.
Instead, he encourages us to question the rules that we've inherited,
Okay.
the ones that often create these impossible double binds,
Right.
setting us up for frustration and a sense of failure.
Like those societal expectations that we talked about.
Exactly, like the pressure to be both free and obedient, or
Right.
to be independent while conforming to social norms.
Yeah, it's like
Those contradictory rules
it's like
are a sign that something's off.
yeah, we're trying to solve a puzzle, but some of the pieces
Hey,
are
what a difference
Yeah.
from a different puzzle.
Yeah.
And so, and that's where I think this call for a new image of man comes in.
Yes.
If we're going to redefine the rules of the game,
Yeah.
we need to start by redefining our understanding
Of who we are.
of who we are.
It starts with challenging that deeply ingrained notion
Uh-huh.
of ourselves as isolated egos, separate from the world around us.
So he's saying that we might be far more expansive.
Far more expansive
We realize.
than we realize.
What if, he's proposing our true selves
Yeah.
aren't confined by our physical boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but actually encompass the entire universe?
That's the idea.
That's a big...
It's a radical shift in perspective.
Yeah, it is radical.
But if we begin to recognize our interconnectedness
Okay.
with all things Xeris,
Mm-hmm.
then competition and the pursuit of personal gain
Right.
start to lose their allure.
Because we realize we're not playing against each other.
Right.
We're all part of this.
We're playing as part of a larger unified whole. Yeah. Yeah, and that's where that playfulness comes in.
Exactly. It's not about adopting a passive approach to life.
Okay.
It's about engaging with a sense of curiosity, experimentation,
Mm-hmm.
and even humor.
So letting go of that need to control everything
Yeah.
and just being open
Be
to,
open to the surprises.
yeah, to the surprises that life throws at us.
And recognizing that even our mistakes and missteps
Right.
are all part of the learning process,
Yeah.
part of that grand experiment of life.
It's like we're all improvising together
Yeah.
to create this
This
magnificent.
ever-changing symphony of existence.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And so when we approach it from that perspective,
Yeah.
it's less about those rigid doctrines and more about just like,
Guidelines for creative expression.
yeah, guidelines for creative expression.
Yeah.
So it's less about winning and more about just,
Playing authentically
yeah, playing authentically.
with a sense of wonder and delight.
Yeah, and enjoying the dance.
Enjoying the dance, not just focusing on the destination.
Yeah, and so Watts leaves us with this question.
What's that?
If life is a game, what are the rules you want to play by?
That's a great question.
It is a great question. It's like,
Yeah.
what a powerful invitation
Yeah.
to step into our own creative power,
To become conscious co-creators of our own reality.
Yeah.
Define our own values and live in alignment with them.
And that's what I think is so valuable about exploring his work.
Absolutely.
It's not just about acquiring knowledge.
It's about transforming our way of being in the world.
Yeah. And so as we wrap up this episode,
Yeah.
I encourage you to continue delving into his work.
Yeah.
See how his ideas resonate with you.
Ask yourself that question.
Yeah, what rules do you want to play by?
Yeah, in this grand game of life.
In this grand game of life, the deep dive may be over for today.
It is.
But your exploration
These ideas.
of these ideas is just beginning.
Keep going.